30 seconds to countdown. Standing by for master check. 2 seconds good. Down is good. Stand by for countdown. 5, 4, 3.
Well, good morning everyone, and welcome here in a nice cool morning actually in Sabi Sands. Welcome with Wild Earth, and it's as I mentioned, a gorgeous morning, a little bit overcast. After the very hot weather we've been having the last few days, it should be fun to drive around in a bit cooler weather, and hopefully also for the wildlife. My name is Pieter, and it is as always a pleasure to be in the bush, be on safari, and to go look around and see what we can find. So let's go and enjoy the morning. Quite a bit of wind last night, and thinking that we might get some rain, but nothing last night. But certainly it is overcast enough that perhaps during the course of today we might get a bit of rain. But as I mentioned just now, this weather being so cool is normally very, very good for wildlife, especially the cats. They can be a little bit active or longer, active for longer, shall I say, perhaps, just because it is nice and cool, and it should stay cool as well for the first few hours. I'll talk to the game drives quickly. I just heard Texan there, a friend of mine for years. Let's see what his route is this morning. Texan again. Morning Texan, Pieter, how are you? Very good. Which way are you going this morning? What's your route this morning? What's your route this morning, Texan? No, I was just looking for a route updates or any updates. Left here. Sebastian will go a bit forward. Oh yes, and of course Sebastian this morning on camera, and Craig back in final control. Leave the team out here with you. We've got some baboons on the left, and now they, apart from being very interesting animals, they're also extremely good sentries or watch guards. So if there was anything walking around here that could be a danger to them, in other words a predator, then they would have been alert to it and showing us alarm calls and posturing and so on, but it seems they're very much in relaxed early morning mode. These of course are Chakma baboons. We tend to just refer to them as baboons. It's the only baboon species here in southern Africa. Check something on the radio then. Go text. Send me a text and I'll come see you a bit later today to say hello. It's a little bit difficult to see from this angle, but you can just see the movement of the second baboon. This is the big male getting groomed there. And grooming, of course, plays a very important role in, well, pretty much most animals' social and hygienic life. With baboons, it's a very important social aspect to it, but obviously from a practical point of view, getting rid of external parasites or exoparasites, ticks and fleas and things like that is very important. And then also from a social point, it's very important bonding. Typically you normally find it's the submissive animal that will groom a dominant animal, and then the favor will be returned. Maybe not all the time, but a lot of the time. And I think it's also just feels good. You all know what it's like if someone else, another human being, scratches your back or rubs your hair. It's just a feel-good aspect to it as well, which I'm sure is the same for baboons. Speaking of feeling good, it feels really good to be out here this morning, and I want to make the most of this sort of early part of the drive. There's a couple of other game drive vehicles out that can help us look around for wildlife. But I do want to cover a bit of ground, see what we can find. Someone that certainly have come a lot of drives over many years with us at Wild Earth, and just talking about the road names, I certainly remember the road names well. I've been away for a while, but I have spent actually many years. In fact, Djuma is the place I've spent the most collective years of my life since leaving school. I've spent in excess of 6, almost 7 years around here, so especially Western Gowrie, this Djuma area that we're on, Boyatella, is I think probably imprinted forever. We can go past Gowrie Dam, which is also the water that has the camera on it during the day and night, and I think I want to sort of slowly zigzag up towards Buffalo Dam, right up in the northeastern corner, unless of course we come across some tracks that show us to go a different direction, or maybe something on the radio, any bit of information that might sort of steer us somewhere. have to apologize if I'm sounding a bit croaky. Got a bit of a sore throat, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem, but my voice sounds a bit funny. One thing that has of course changed in the last week with this bit of rain quite a bit of rain that's been here, is things are getting a little bit greener, but in terms of the puddles, as you can see as we go along the road every now and again, some puddles and ponds, is that the water availability has changed dramatically from what it was a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago. So animals can now actually get water pretty much anywhere, and unless it's the really big guys like elephants, they still have to find larger bodies of water, but things like leopard and lions certainly they don't have to be too concerned about finding water. Just coming past Gowrie Dam here, but see there's a nice herd of impala up there, also very relaxed, pretty much the same as those baboons earlier. Enjoying all this fresh green grass. Of course, everything where they're standing, if you look at that general area, it's very, very short. It's all that new flush after the rains, but literally within 1-2 weeks it'll start getting thicker, especially if we get some more rain in the next few days. Little bit of play there. Now again, this cooler weather combined with obviously much better food suddenly with the greenery around, you'll probably find a few lively impalas. And the other thing that we will look around for with these Pacific antelope is that there has been some lambs within the last week literally, and it's sort of one of the signs or signals of the beginning of summertime, and you start seeing the impala babies. There was a little bit of, I wouldn't quite call it alarm calling, but sort of snorting from a few impalas. That's what that one is looking at while it's getting groomed by that oxpecker, the bird in its neck. Is he cleaning it? But we're still very close to Voitella Lodge here, so I think probably maybe just some people moving around, or there's sort of some odd movement that one or two impalas were just making sure wasn't a threat. It's actually classic. Look at the bird there on the impala's head. Now earlier those baboons were grooming each other. In the case of the impala, they also groom each other, also get allo grooming with impalas, but you often find these oxpeckers with them, and these birds will actually clean predominantly ticks, probably a few other exoparasites if they find them, but mainly ticks they clean off. Nice group of them here to the left as well. They're sort of a mixed bunch. Some males, ones with the horns. This time of the year, as I said, is the beginning of the lambing season. Sort of over the next month or two, there'll be more and more lambs arriving. So there's not really that much competition between the males, so you do find males and females mixing quite a bit. Here by sort of end of March, April, May, for the 2 months or so of rut or mating season, you tend to find the males competing very heavily. So the younger males or the not so dominant males, they stay in bachelor groups, normally either totally separate or at least on the periphery of the female or breeding groups. At this time of year you'll find them, as you can see there's, well, mainly females, but males mixed in between as well. Okay. Oh well, far away, but I've just spotted 2 hyenas. Actually too far for us to see. We'll get closer to them. 2 spotted hyenas. Looks like they're coming down towards Gary Woodall, so we can have a look at them. Spotted hyenas. Hello Sabina. Excuse me. Sabina just asking about what I was saying about water earlier. Sabina, what I meant is just with this rain we've had, there are a lot of puddles around, so there's lots of little sort of small pockets of water. I'll show you as we go along. And that just means that especially your smaller and mid-sized animals can get water pretty much anywhere at the moment. They don't have to worry too much about coming to these bigger bodies of water like Gary Dam, as you can see. We're going fast. There we go. That's quite a few hyena actually. And floppy ear. We were just talking about it last night. It looks like her. The big one there, sort of. There we go. Now hyenas actually quite like water. They'll often come down for a drink if they're in the vicinity of water. Even lie in the water, cool down in it. Sometimes just lie in it for the, I think, the pleasure of it, and probably also to get. Again, if you're in muddy water, it can be good for getting rid of parasites. But yeah, that looks like floppy ear to me, and she looks, I would say, either very heavily pregnant or very full. But looking at the other hyenas in the back, they're not looking too full, so I think she's maybe pregnant as well. But they're heading in the direction, we'll stick with them if we can for a bit. Saw a total of 4 there. Amazing animals. I mean, typically the spotted hyenas, they sort of get a little bit of a bad rep, if you want, from a lot of documentaries, but amazing animals, highly social, highly interactive with each other, and also highly intelligent, like most predators have to be to some extent. But yeah, that's definitely floppy ear. Brilliant. Old female. Oh, they decided to drink water there from a smaller pond rather than the big waterhole. And there's a third one coming to join them as well. Now hyenas, of course, are predominantly nocturnal. It's not that they'll only be active at night, they'll be quite active during daytime, especially again when it's cool and overcast like this. But typically speaking, they do, whether it's hunting, which they actually do more than people realize sometimes, or otherwise, of course, scavenging. When the opportunity is there, they will take food from other predators, lions, leopards, and they will steal and scavenge from that. Okay. These guys are sort of returning from their nocturnal excursions or adventures, depending on what was going on. Doesn't wait for her to finish. She seems quite thirsty. You can't actually see the water, but there's a little sort of puddle just in that area. You can easily see where her name comes from. Very heavily pregnant. Not only is the belly, sort of full looking, but the way it's sort of sitting quite low and behind. So another guy told me there's a den with a female with youngsters, but with this specific clan we've seen it on a few occasions before where two females will have cubs. So maybe there's a second litter on the way. So the Land Rover running out of steam there. Yeah, that's Sebas just holding his nose there. Very, very strong smell from them. Then they're going down the road, we'll follow them. But hyenas, generally speaking, aren't, well, let's just say they're not perfume models. Can sometimes smell a bit like what they eat, which is rotten meat. Leon was just asking the difference between spotted hyenas, or spotties as we tend to sort of colloquially call them, and brown hyenas. Now brown hyenas we've seen once, well actually once in the last almost 2 decades in this area. That was a year or two ago live, which was brilliant. And well, brown hyenas, as you can imagine, they're more a brown color, and spotted hyenas, judging from the name, they're more spotted. Especially the younger ones, it's normally more prevalent on. So these guys are running off into the bush. I don't think we're going to see too much more of them. Just as they're walking away, you can see the spot markings there, especially that middle one, bit of a younger one, so the marks are quite distinct still. Spotted hyenas are also highly social, whereas brown hyenas tend to be more solitary when you see them. And brown hyenas are also more sort of shaggy coated, sort of long dark brown hair. Guys, PC just heading from Barry Dam along the Spokane, sort of east southeast. The giraffe running off. Don't know if we'll get to see him. Get a bit closer. It's just in that thick stuff. I just saw the movement in there. The world's tallest animal, and in a few seconds it's gone. It's running up this way somewhere, so disappeared into the bush. It's running away from those hyenas. Not that hyenas will really hunt a big giraffe, but maybe you just saw the movement and decided rather to stay clear of them. there's a specific mating season for hyenas. With most predators, really, it's not as fixed. You know, the impala, for instance, the impala you can almost set your calendar by it. They've got about a 6-8 week mating span or mating season, of which sort of 2 peaks over full moon time normally. And as I mentioned earlier, the lambs are just arriving, and normally, especially in the low veld, there's a bit of like a friendly bet or a friendly prediction always between the guides and people that live here. You know, everyone's sort of thinking, like, this is why the first impala lamb will be so and so. It's normally within, you know, a week or two of a set time period. But with most predators, because their food supply works differently from a herbivore, you don't get those very sort of fixed mating seasons and very fixed birthing seasons. Wild dogs a little bit, but with hyenas it's not really fixed. I mean, I've watched pups growing up during winter, watched pups growing up during summer, and obviously, you don't necessarily see the mating behavior often, but the results of the mating behavior, that is seen often. And we're going to see this morning, if not this morning, this afternoon, on one of these drives at least, we will go past the den. If I can find it, Mark explained to me last night whereabouts it is, and you'll probably to find it and see maybe we can some youngster activity there. We might bump into these again. I'm going to sort of circle around past Vulture's Nest Road and Spaghetti Junction. That's roughly the direction that these hyenas were heading into, so we might sort of come across them again. They pretty much look like hyenas heading home rather than looking for food. They probably had a good evening, enough food during the night, and heading back towards the den area. He just asked me a question that 10 or 15 years ago I would have been able to sort of give you the book answers. He just asked me how long or what the lifespan is of hyenas. Perhaps a couple of you want to just have a look and let me know what you can find over the net. That's probably about in the region of 15 years, 12, 15 years, something in that time span, maybe a bit older. This floppy ear female is quite old. She might be even upwards of 15. And that's of course under wild conditions where animals are fending for themselves and fighting sometimes with predators and dealing with good years and bad years in terms of food availability. Conditions can also play quite a large role in the life expectancy of an animal. I mean, actually looking at us as the human race or the human species, it's a good example. If you look at the average life expectancy of someone living in, let's say, London or New York, compared to someone living in Papua New Guinea or somewhere in Central Africa, your natural environment and circumstances can play a massive, massive role with your health, and obviously health plays a big role in terms of your longevity or how old you can get. Excuse me. Pardon me. A couple little birds making alarm calls there, but nothing too serious. I'm just happy to be alive this morning. email just asking about the impalas, if the females hang around with the males during the lambing season. Well, again, specifically with impala, a large part of their safety is in numbers. In other words, the larger the group. Yeah, thank you. Sebastian was just saying something there. Impalas, if you 2 or 3 animals and one of you gives birth, then there's not that many eyes to look around, and certainly if you were a bit vulnerable, then you're a bit in a dangerous position. But if there's 50 or 100 or 200 of you, that's just that many more eyes and ears. So they do use the herd as safety, but typically the actual birthing, well, it varies. It depends on the habitat as well. Around here it's quite dense, so often the female might actually, the actual birthing process or time, she might be just away from the herd, not as to attract attention to herself if something was moving past the herd, but she'll certainly be part of the herd again very, very soon after the birth. Whether it's with males or females doesn't really matter. It's more just about the number of bodies and subsequently the number of alert eyes and ears. Excuse me. Brilliant, thanks. Some feedback coming in there. That's what I love about the activeness, it's an active aspect of being able to talk to people coming along and drive. Feedback about the age of hyenas, 12 to 15 in the wild. I'm sure the cases where they get a bit older. I mean, we've got 2 leopards here that got almost 20 years old. Let's say 15 years average, and in captivity, in other words, in, let's call it first world living conditions, food and hygiene is never a problem, or hunger or thirst, up to 40 years even. Excuse me, Mark, that's really getting to me. So yeah, hyenas have been recorded to get much, much older. I mean, that's more than twice the life expectancy of a hyena living in the wild. But these ones, they certainly do live in the wild. They're competing 100% with other hyenas, other predators, and their surroundings and environments as well. So about 15 or so for an older hyena. Past here. This is Chilapan, we're just going past. Always a good spot to check, but doesn't look like there's anything here. Let's have a quick look, maybe show you what we're talking about. Over the years I've had some really, really magic sightings and moments around this little waterhole. But this morning, apart from the strong smell of, it smells like sort of a mixture of buffalo and rhino and elephant, all your big herbivores, they're around here often. You can smell their dung around the waterhole. Quite a strong breeze, you can probably just hear it blowing in from the southeast, so again might bring more moisture into the area, possibility of rain later. checking the road here. Always good early morning. Of course, always good to check for tracks, but early morning especially, the things that might have been moving around during the night, especially the big hairy things like leopard and lion. No tracks yet. You never know. There is actually. That's hyena tracks. But yeah, while we're looking for them, Penny was just wondering what I think about the lion sizes, the different lion populations in southern Africa. Namibia, where I'm from, South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, it's all sort of part of the similar habitats, and I'm sure going back not even that long ago, but a couple hundred years ago, the lion populations were much more mixed to an extent than they are these days. But yeah, they're pretty much, in terms of size, all similar size. Although, just over the last many years, looking at different populations, especially with a good friend of mine that knows lion populations extremely well, Gus van Dijk, the Namibian lions would seem a little bit larger, more specifically the Etosha lions for that population. If you looked at pure bulk and weight, that tends to be a bit bigger than, let's say, lions around here. To the naked eye, I'd say even to the trained eye, you probably wouldn't see that much of a difference, but if you were to measure them and weigh them, you'd notice that they are a bit bulkier and a bit heavier. And it might just actually have to do with, like you just said, with hyenas, your living conditions, your food, your environment. In that they live more in semi-open spaces and with less parasite loads typically and so forth. So, yeah, in my opinion, they are a bit bigger. And I don't say that just from my opinion, it's also from a sort of wide variety of lions and worked with lions all over, but it really is marginal. It's not a given for each lion. That can vary. Here we go, more hyenas. Morning, guys. Excuse me. That one's busy chewing on something. Stations 2 more PC on Battalier Road, just up a little bit from Spaghetti Junction. Now you can clearly see why they're called spotted hyena. Just earlier we were talking about the difference between spotted hyenas and brown hyenas, and visually it's quite easy. That one's not really interested in sharing, it looks like. Actually beautiful animals. Again, they're depicted quite often as the villains of the bush stories, but as I said, socially they're amazing animals. How they look after their young, very, very intensive parenting compared to most other predators. But even the way they look, they might smell a bit as we said earlier, but they're beautiful animals, very bear-like in a way for me sometimes. The faces, and then the slightly longer hair, compared again to your large cats. I'm going to just roll back for you very slowly, just so that branches. There we go. Very, very powerful jaws. Hyenas, even though they can hunt and do hunt, they are scavengers, and ultimately, they do eat a lot of carrion, and they can literally bite through thick femur bones of animals, the thick heavy bones. They can break that open, crack it with their teeth, get to the marrow. Very, very strong jaws. In fact, some of the strongest jaws, or biting power if you want, biting force of all animals. These two are youngsters, they're sort of young teenagers. Excuse me again. I hope my voice lasts the next day or two. Now this young hyena could easily spend the next hour or two, 3 even, just gnawing away at that bone, getting each little piece of nutrition from it, whether it's a little piece of sinew or skin, or later on maybe break the bone open, as I said, get to the marrow. Then again, it's this animal, the same as the other ones around you, they do have the luxury of time to an extent. They have to work hard. People always think that animals sort of just relax around the bush. They have to work hard to find their food, but there are times when your best activity actually is to not spend too much energy. So these guys, for the rest of the day, probably will stick around this area, chew on the bone. This other one will try and get a piece of the action at some stage. Nothing for him to chew on at the moment, or her. It's very difficult, hyenas, to tell the sexes, especially when they're young. Very, very difficult. When they get really mature, like Floppy earlier, you can tell it by dominance really. The females tend to get, well, physically bigger than the males, but also they're dominant over males. So even a low-ranking adult female will be more dominant than a high-ranking adult male. But physically there's very little to help you tell the difference between them. Then you just roll back again, see if they can stick in the open. No, gravity is not enough. Let's try and see if we can figure out what kind of a bone that is that hyena is chowing or chewing on. So chowing is a bit of a slang word here in South Africa. Alan was just asking whether there's an alpha male with hyenas. Well, certainly with the females there's a very, very strict and sort of set hierarchy. With the males it's less so, just because they are so less dominant, or so much less dominant than the females are. But you'd still get a dominant male that'll be the one that gets to mate. But it's nothing like you would find with lions, for instance, or wild dogs, where that structure is very important for the males as well. Well, this one's really working at it. Sebastian, can you make out what that leg is? Maybe some of you that can have a close look. Looks a bit old, looks like it's been in the water as well. Oh, there we go. Oh, maybe from I guess almost from a kudu or something, looking at the size of it. Young kudu or female kudu. It's not the freshest of bones. Oh, this one got a little snippet. Now you can see the breeze I was talking about. See the movement in the grass around that hyena. Yeah, it's one of the old hyena conversations or discussions. Jack's just asking, are hyenas closely related to dogs or to cats or to both? Well, Jack, I've never been a person with a very strong scientific approach to my guiding and to my experience of viewing of animals. There are some people that could give you a whole scientific breakdown of it. But they actually sort of I guess you could say to neither, or you could say to both. Let's spend a few more minutes before we move on. Have a nice look at this one's face. You'll see what I meant, that they're actually quite beautiful animals. Look at this. If he stays there, they actually have they're actually beautiful animals, more so than people realize. But yeah, so neither or both. They sort of fit in. It's sort of halfway somewhere. You can actually put them a bit closer to, hello, very, very curious animals as well, obviously highly intelligent. This one is right here next to us now. It's 5-6 feet away from the vehicle, and it's walking right behind us where we can't actually see it anymore. What's he doing, Sebastian? Walking off. Okay. Sometimes they actually come up and have a sniff at the vehicle, and as we drive along we also pick up scents, things we drive past, and they find it curious. But I think we'll leave them and we'll continue on. Jack, yeah, so they sort of fit in between somewhere. As I said, so you can put them very closer to badgers and mongooses for that matter. Also how people break it up, and how people think of it. Cheetahs, for instance, not even that long ago, a few decades back, people thought were more related to dogs because of the nails not retracting. And then obviously later, when they look at it, so that they are actually cats. For a layman out in the field looking at them, you sort of think that it's obvious that they're cats just because they look like cats. This bird, I know birds are always a very difficult thing, but if this one sticks around, Sebastian said, I know that it's the worst thing to try and get because they can fly away any second, but you don't get to see these birds too often close like this. This is one of my many favorite birds, right in the tambuti twigs there. And as I said, with birds, they're always tricky because they're small and they fly. 1 second they're there, 1 second they're gone. But let's just see this one. If it sticks, there we go. Beautiful, lovely colors. It's got a whole mixture of colors on it, even though we can only see the front quarter of it now. The crest on the head, which is where the name is gotten from. It's a crested barbet. In Afrikaans we call them a kuifkop houtkapper, which means a crested woodpecker. They're not really woodpeckers in the traditional sense of the word or the name, but similar in the sense that they also break open and sort of break off pieces of bark and get into hollows to get their food. Lovely birds, quite vocal in summertime, and as I said, this very sort of random mixture of colors, and even the feathers look a little bit ruffled always. Roll back a centimeter. There we go, come on. A little bit of early morning grooming. Actually staying clean and staying neat is very important for pretty much all animals. I know that I've joked about it many times before, that to think that humans, up until again not that long ago, 100 years ago or so, and even still in some areas, hygiene wasn't always that important for humans. I'm thinking back to some of the great cities 100, 200 years ago. But for animals it's very important, obviously, because in the case of this now, of a bird, those feathers not only help to keep you warm, but they're also quite important for being able to fly. So if you don't look after your gear, so to speak, then at some stage it might fail you. So practically important, but also from a health point of view. Animals spend a lot of time actually every day cleaning themselves, grooming themselves, washing even. I'm sure we've all watched birds at a bird bath on occasion. And typically early morning and late afternoon is grooming time for most animals to some extent or another. Well, that certainly has been one of the best views I've had in a long time of a crested barbet. You see them often, but normally they just like to be a little bit further than that from humans or movement. Driving along a ravine here or riverbed, it's always good to try and sort of peek inside. You never know what might be lying or walking down on the sand there. Prints in the sand there. It's actually called porcupine. One I was just asking those bones that the hyenas were eating, how much nutrition is in them? Well, I was going to say, well, for me and you certainly not much, but then again, I've had some mighty fine stews over the years. So, I don't know, for the hyenas certainly there's quite a lot of value in there. That one was chewing on the sinews and the skin even. But breaking open the bones, the marrow inside is very rich in fat, protein obviously, and then especially in the case of hyenas, they'll eat quite a bit of the actual bone itself. They can digest much more of the bone than we could even imagine. So I know there's food in there for them. Barbet now, as I was saying, that there's a nice view of one. Well, like many birds that are out in the normal wild conditions might be a bit shy. A lot of birds can actually be attracted. So I'm going to have to make this sort of point too long, but I've seen amazing bird life even in cities, because more and more people are becoming aware of bird life and putting out food for them. Barbets can be attracted like many other birds, and they can become relatively relaxed as humans, and it's actually a good thing, especially in urban and suburban areas. To put out bird food just allows more birds to be around, because if one person does it, it's one thing, but if there's a million people and 5 or 10% of them are aware of the wildlife living in the areas, and they have things like water and food available, you can actually find that the numbers can increase and sustainably increase. Barbets are attracted by fruit more so than by seeds, for instance, and putting out some little bits of fruit, little pieces of apple or banana, can actually do wonders for attracting other bird species apart from just your seed eaters. And yeah, you get things like barbets and lories and so on. You find even in big cities like Johannesburg in South Africa now that wouldn't necessarily have been there a couple of decades ago. There's a rhino track. like from last night. He was just cutting across the road here, so not necessarily going to go looking for him. Looks like a big bull on the track. I thought I heard a bark earlier when we were looking at that barbet. I thought I heard a kudu just barking. It was a bit far away and I didn't hear anything again subsequently. But here are the kudus. And well, they're looking quite relaxed, so I don't think there's anything really that bothered them. One of my other favorite species of antelope, beautiful, beautiful antelopes. These are all females or cows as you call them. The bulls, many of you will recognize, even if you haven't seen them before, even if you've just seen pictures. They obviously quite a large antelope, quite tall, and the males have got these very magnificent spiral horns, like sort of corkscrew spirals. But the males and females typically don't actually hang around or spend time together. Typically they're in either bachelor groups or solitary, the males, and the females in sort of small groups, 3-4 adults up to 10-15 depending on the area. But as we can see, they do like the thicker stuff. Those impalas this morning, they're mixed feeders. They eat grass and leaves, so open or thick habitat can be good for them. But kudus are specifically browsers or leaf eaters. There's a bit of a gap through to those ones. And so kudus typically you tend to see in more dense areas like we have here. Specifically this morning they're feeding on mainly knobthorn leaves. There's a nice sort of mixed acacia thicket here for them to feed from. And for them it would have been hard times up until a couple of weeks ago when the tree started flushing again. So I'm sure they're happy to be able to get plenty of fresh new leaves into their diet. Beautiful bush sounds of the morning. You know, turtle dove and francolins they're calling. Southern boo-boos earlier. Barbets. So let's leave these kudus. I'm still slowly making our way up towards Buffelshoek Dam. So it's all down. It's where is he now? There's potentially something for us to go look at. Texan found them earlier. We're going to see if it's still there. It's big. It's not so hairy, even though you describe it as a big and hairy. Speaking of big, there's the question there from some of you that's been coming and driving us for a long time. Ask me what I think of the Gunda. The Gunda is this trusty steed that we're driving around in. Before, we were always driving. I used to drive the tank in the old days, which is a whole different character, and then the Jigga, which was a little 90 Land Rover, brilliant off-road. This one is good. I like the TDIs. I'm a big Land Rover fan, so all the different varieties of them, slight different personalities in terms of the engines. And this, of course, has got the diesel engine, as opposed to the petrol of the Jigga. But I like it. Land Rover is driving around in the bush. Therefore I like it. I was just asking about some of the animal characters that we have around. You know, obviously living and driving around in an area, you get to know certain animals quite well. Gorilla being the best example, that female leopard that I would absolutely love to find today or tomorrow. Although she might be either giving birth or giving birth very soon, or perhaps even have given birth already in the last few days. But you get her, and there's elephant that we get to know, Gordy and so on. And I was asking about the Judge and Seesaw, and those are two buffalo bulls that have been around for a long time. And the Judge is one of my favorites in terms of that. Easy to recognize, firstly. You know, the buffaloes, they've got these curly horns, and basically the horns have been broken off, so he's only left with the two big bosses, and it looks a bit like I was going to say like a skull cap, but he always reminded me of those judges in the old days, and in some countries still in the modern days, they wear the wigs, these curly wigs, and very stern looking buffalo. And Seesaw, also one of the characters that's been around. And both of them are Dagga boys, old bulls, in their specific cases, not part of the herds anymore. They're sort of just in retirement, so to speak. How old they are, it's difficult to say. Buffalo live 20-25 years in the wild. But then again, you would find slight variations depending on genetics and conditions. And certainly the Judge, you know, looking at him, his physical bulk is still extremely impressive. His whole demeanor, I mean, I've seen him sort of chase off a rhino, I've seen him chase off other bigger buffalo than himself, so he's not a buffalo to be trifled with. And if he looks like that in his old age, I can only imagine him in his prime. So I'd say he's probably at least 24, 25, if not a bit older. He'd be up there with sort of older of buffalo, but yeah, it's difficult to say exactly. luck we're going to find what I'm hope we going to find. So that was a bit of a clumsy sentence. It was up around here this morning that Texan had something. If we don't find it, I'll tell you what it was. If we find it, then you'll see shortly. Just while we're looking for it, Paddy was just asking about the differences in animals where I live up in Namibia now compared to here. Yeah, well, there's obviously variations. Habitats play a role. You might find many of the same animals. There'd be slight differences. Often with your mongoose species, you might have slightly different mongoose species. Up that way we've got a dik-dik, which is a beautiful little tiny antelope, in fact the smallest antelope. They're quite special, I really like them. And their legs are, well, thinner than my pinky, quite a bit thinner actually, about the same diameter as a pencil. We get a lot of eland up there as well, in the area that I'm in. But I mean, obviously Namibia, the same as South Africa, you get a wide variety of habitats within the country, so it depends on where you are, what you can see. But it's also part of Southern Africa, so generally speaking the big game, the same or similar big game, quite a healthy population of black rhinos still as well, which is something I'm very fond of. So careful look around here. Another vehicle up ahead, as you can see. It's one of the vehicles from Buffelshoek by the looks of it. Ah! Surprise on the left hand side. I won't have to tell you what we're looking for because you can see it there. Beautiful backdrop there as well. You can see the horizon line. We're sort of looking sort of west, a little bit south of west at the moment. And if you haven't guessed it or don't know it, these are white rhinos. There's some mother and calf. See that calf, the second horn is developing a bit now, even though it's got a little bit of mud over it, so the shape is not quite that distinct. There's some were just over a year old, a few months over a year. White rhinos, of course, also known as square-lipped rhinos, which is maybe a more correct description. Basically, white and black rhinos will be the same color depending on the area they're in. If they're in an area with more black mud, you'll more often see blacker rhinos. If they're in an area with more red mud, you'll often see more redder rhinos. But both the African rhino species are sort of a greyish colour, sort of like these ones at the moment. And that one's a bit darker there, it's been in the mud earlier this morning perhaps. But square-lipped and hooked-lip rhino, that would be the more sort of descriptive names for them. Square-lipped rhino, these guys we're looking at now are grazers, so they've got these wide flat mouths, quite fleshy lips, and they literally pluck the grass with their lips, whereas the other species, the black rhino, have got this little prehensile lip. Sometimes reminds me of tortoises when you look at their faces, but a little lip that they can pull twigs and things into their mouths. No more browsers. Let the guys know they're still here. Just going to give them a minute or two. We might move slightly, but typically when runners are feeding the way that these two are at the moment, they sort of just move around a little bit, literally like very large lawnmowers. A big female like this, well, she's not a monster female, but she's a good sized female. She probably weighs 1.7 tons maybe. Big males can go up to and over 2 tons. That's kilograms, 2,000 kilograms. But yeah, let's say she's 1,600 kilos. It's about 3,500 pounds. Means that they'll eat on average 5% of their body weight. So in her case, that would be about 75 kilograms of grass every day. That's 165 pounds. So as you can imagine, quite a bit of time is spent grazing. Station at Tuncombe is still same place, Chira Cutland, Bovisic boundary, grazing the firebreak. I think I'm going to leave these two to their grazing. We're not that far from Bovisic Dam, so I want to go have a look there. Might come back to them again later on, as those two most quite likely. I'll be grazing for another half an hour or so, and then I might well lie down and take a bit of a sleep or a nap. Nice and cool this morning, so I might just stick around this exact area. We shall see. Now I was just asking about some of the measures that are taken to try and prevent or at least curb poaching. Of course, it's one of the sad stories. White rhinos not that long ago almost extinct due to heavy poaching, and the numbers have recovered nicely through very focused and specific conservation efforts. And it's a long story, I'm not going to go into it too much now, but the poaching of animals and all species around the world are a problem. But also the habitat, space poaching, so to speak, is also another problem. But that's a whole discussion. Luckily there are areas like this and many other areas that are conserved, and as humans becoming more and more aware of conserving habitats firstly, and then also looking after species. I was asking about little GPS tracking devices and transponders really that they can put into the horns of rhinos. And that plays a role. It does help. It does make it easier to catch some poachers or some poached material. Obviously there's always the question of the cost of things. Well, I was just reading an article not long ago about exactly that. It's important to focus the money available for conservation, which is relatively small, and doing the most possible with it. We're going to keep moving along. There's some impala and waterbuck here, but we'll see them again later. I want to get down to Bohusik Dam just to have a look. I believe there's been a nice part of hippos there as well. Perhaps we'll see them. water there. Let's get a bit closer. Quite a few of them. Oh, and goslings as well. Look at that, just behind, to the right of those hippos. Looks like quite a few goslings there. Egyptian goose. The naked eye I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 perhaps. You see them, Seb?
Oh yeah, okay, I got them.
Looks like they might walk away. We'll have a look at the hippos just now, although they've all disappeared below the water now. Brilliant. Baby animals, I think we're all suckers for them. Whether it's a baby goose or a baby hippo or a baby impala. Something always exciting about the arrival of new lives. Well, geese of course grazers, the same as hippos, although hippos do most of their grazing at night, which is why most of the time when we see hippos it's during the day in the water, when they sort of just spending time or killing time to an extent, and then they go out again at night. On a day like today when it's nice and overcast, actually hippos wouldn't necessarily mind going out, but typically if it's very hot, very sunny, it's better for them to be in the water. It's cooler obviously, but also they're a little bit more sensitive to the sun than most other mammals. This also means they can disappear when they want. Typically speaking, it's just the ears and the eyes sticking out. You can see they're protruding, and then just like that they can disappear. Little dab chick as well, just swimming out of the bottom corner there. And we might just see it. There's a quiet kingfisher hovering just, oh there he goes, awesome. Not the easiest bird to see, there you go. Hovering, looking for a little fish to catch. Look at how perfectly still the head is. The wings and the body moving, but the head perfectly still. Might dive any second, or it might fly off as well, which is what it did. We're going to stick around. Oh, there's a little one. Youngster, one on the right hand side. We'll stick around another minute or two. It doesn't look like there's much else here at the moment, but we will definitely be back at Buffelshoek Dam during the course of the next drive or two. Always a good spot to check. Jody Wedge is asking, how long can hippos stay underwater? Now of course hippos are mammals like us, they have to breathe oxygen, so they They actually hold their breath when they're underwater. And typically, I mean, if we looked at these guys, they've been sort of bobbing in and out. Typically they stay under for 30 seconds to 1 or 2 minutes. But if something's really bothering them or scaring them or threatening them, they can stay under for up to about 8 minutes. Now again, I'm sure if someone went to measure the record, you might find something longer. But let's say 5-6 minutes, that would be a long time for a hippo to stay under. All spotted there. Sebastian finding that pied kingfisher again. It's one of the few birds that can actually hover perfectly like we saw earlier. I think we can move along slowly. Yeah, Buffelshoek Dam. I've had a few swims in this dam actually, not when there were hippos in it obviously. But the most memorable one was when we had the first big rains a year ago, and we arrived here to find what basically was an empty dam a day or two before, full of fresh new rainwater. It was a brilliant swim. Even the water tasted like rain as well. We're going to leave these hippos. As I said, we're going to head more west now. Randy was just asking, he says he's seen a documentary where a hippo actually killed an impala that was stranded on a small island. Randy, as you suggested in your question as well, hippos don't eat meat. They herbivores, they eat pretty much only grass. But there has been cases where they've been seen to kill something. There's been cases also where hippos have been seen to protect something. In fact, I've seen it in Pilanesberg once, and there have been a few cases where let's say a lion catches something, the hippo, if it's on the edge of the water, will come in and chase the lion off. Now, whether it's to protect that animal, or more likely, again as you suggested there in the question, Randy, that it's more a bit of a territorial thing. So the hippo sees a lion there, doesn't want the lion there, chases it off. Or in the case of the impala you're talking about, something was there, it had a look at it and sort of grabbed it or bit it or killed it. But they don't eat meat. I mean, they're not carnivores in any form or sense. They're pretty much like white rhinos really in terms of their grazing. But can be potentially very dangerous animals. In fact, one of the animals that killed quite a few people in Africa over the many years. They can be very aggressive outside the water, so if a hippo is busy coming back from, let's say it's been grazing the whole night and it's coming back on one of those big hippo paths down to the water, and it bumps into something, it can be very aggressive, and even in the water can be, well, put it this way, you always have to be aware of it. Never ever treat a hippo as just a little sort of animal to how shall I put it? Certainly I'm stuck with what I want, or how I want to say it. But what I mean is they treat them with respect. They can be very, very aggressive animals, and they can quite easily sort of change their attitude. Oh, look at that! Hey, baby impala, and then run away, little guy. Oh, this one looks quite fit already. Yeah, look at that. All legs. I love baby impalas. They're just awesome. It was probably a week old, maybe 10 days or so already. And a quick view of it. I'm sure we'll see some again. There's a smaller baby. That one, I'd say less than a week old. Look at that. Long legs. Of course, they're born what's called precocial, so very soon after birth. I mean, literally minutes after, they can stand and run and sort of everything's working. They're different from, let's say, human babies or lion babies, perhaps cubs, that take quite a while to develop physically. Impalas, they can get up and run around straight after birth. Obviously, that is quite important if potentially you food for something. So the first few days, especially after birth, they just pretty much legs with this tiny little body on top, and then the muscle development starts catching up. Nice bit of liveliness in the area. There's the impala running after a female. There's another ewe. She's already got her baby. It's quite funny. This male is behaving as if it's rutting season, which it's not. Maybe it's just a cool, fresh morning. Beautiful view as well. Termite Mountain in the foreground. Marulas all flashing green. Summer is here. A few questions there from Sue regarding those hippos. The water there, in terms of the actual water depth, probably not much more than a meter at the moment. 3, let's say maybe 4 feet. But then you've got quite a thick layer of soft mud as well. So let's say you've got 3-4 feet of water, and then probably another, that much, maybe 2 feet or so of mud. And those hippos would actually be walking along the bottom to, the bottom of the waterhole. So when they're disappearing like that, they're actually just sort of bending their legs a little bit. And as to the age of that youngster, I didn't see much of it. It was just the head sticking out, but not too old, 5-6 months maybe. Oh, another kudu. Running across the road, and some gnus, blue wildebeest. Looks like we're all having a bit of a lazy morning there. Quite a few of them still lying down. Again, it's a bit cooler than it's been. Not that any of us are complaining. In fact, I was actually giving Sebastian behind the camera a bit of a hard time this morning when he was wearing a jacket, but subsequently I've wished I've had one, so it's nice and fresh this morning. I think the first thing that people think about when they see these these animals, as I said, gnus or blue wildebeest. It's probably of big migrations of East Africa. This is an incredible event where 1 million plus wildebeest migrate, and those are of course on the Great Plains. And again, wildebeest are grazers, so they do extremely well in these plains environments. Around here we don't get big herds, we see them in groups of 5 or 10, 20 maybe. A little bit further north, not even that far from here, the habitats change a bit and you start getting more open plains, and then you start getting them in larger herds, 30 and 40 maybe. So it's only in the really Great Plains environments of Africa, East Africa, Serengeti and Masai Mara, Liwa Plains in Zambia, these kind of areas that you get them in those very large numbers. Bit of stretching, all part of the basic grooming, I guess. That one decided rather to rest a little bit longer. I was just thinking that I quite share that sentiment. I've been on plains quite a bit and haven't been sleeping much for the last few weeks, so this kind of cool weather does make you want to just sort of take it really easy. And the wildebeest at least doing that this morning. They can be very active. I mean, wildebeest, they're sometimes called the clowns of the bush, and certainly during certain times of the year, if we get rains now, if it rains today or tonight and we see them again tomorrow, they can be extremely playful and running around and jumping around. Also during the mating season, you get a lot of activity between males, and they can sometimes be quite comical animals to watch. A lot of people might say that they're not very good looking animals. They're certainly maybe not the prettiest. I wouldn't compare them to, I was going to say, a summer's day, or even a kudu for that matter, but I quite like them. I think they're brilliant animals. I've worked in many areas where you see wildebeest, and I've always enjoyed seeing them and viewing them, and they can be extremely entertaining, except if they're doing this, taking it easy. A bit more grooming activity. Let's continue on. Let's just try and get closer to them. There's a hornbill just on the road up ahead that's feeding from some animal dung. Maybe there's some insects in there or seeds. It's just flown off. Let's see if we can have a look at it. Always entertaining to see hornbills. And this is a young hornbill, youngish red-billed hornbill, adult and a youngster here together. Not quite the same as Zazu. I know that Zazu is a very well-known character in Lion King for many or most of us. That was based on the yellow-billed hornbill. This is the red-billed. We also get a grey-billed hornbill here. If I could bill myself every time I said bill, it would be quite a bill afterwards. We also get the ground hornbills here. Seems everything is grooming this morning. So I'm just checking the wing feathers there. Even though I can't see them, I can hear some European bee-eaters, another very typical summer sound. They'll be flying somewhere up above us. Let's continue on. There were some yellow-billed hornbills, but they're a bit far in. I don't think we'll get to see them much. If the opportunity comes along, we'll show you some red bills as well, some yellow bills one. Let's go further west. So with regards to that, the rhinos we saw earlier, Sandy was just asking at what age the youngsters actually leave the adults. Sandy, that can vary quite a bit. Firstly, between male and female, the males tend to leave around 2 years old or so, and they generally when they leave don't necessarily come back. But with the females, they will often, even if they have left the mother for a few months when she has a new calf, they'll come back again and spend time together. So the females, it can vary substantially. Basically what happens is when the white rhino, or black rhino for that matter, when they have their next calf, the previous calf normally leaves, and then more so in the case of white rhinos, the female calves will come back again and spend another while with the adults. So it's not a fixed thing. It's not like with leopard that you can sort of say, well, typically around 2 years or so. It can vary quite a bit depending on the population size and a variety of things. So it's quite a large variety in when individuals will leave the parents. But as young as 18 months, and in the case of some, maybe even many years before the females will actually go their own ways. Interesting question there from Claire. Hello Claire, and also quite a few other old friends in the vehicle. Always nice to hear from you. Claire was just asking about buffalo, if they can feed twins in terms of the mammary glands. Claire, I guess they could. I don't actually, off the top of my head, I don't know how many mammary glands buffalo have. I think it's 2. Might be 4 even, like in the case with cows, but chances of them actually having twins is very, very low. I mean, it does happen. There was even a case of elephant having twins, or an elephant having twins in Kruger. I remember we spoke about it quite a bit on the drives a year or 2 ago. But yeah, I don't think it's something that it's so seldom that it happens. But if it did happen and the mother was in good enough condition, which I think she should be if she was having twins, then she should be able to feed both at the same time from a mammary gland perspective. But I think from the actual space it might be a problem. If you've got 2 buffalo calves, let's just hypothetically speaking, if you were to take their noses and mouths, and there's only so much space, it might be a bit difficult. It might be easier for them to alternate. But it's not really a very common thing for at least animals that have precocial babies, your herbivores typically, to have twins. It's more so with the animals that can afford to have small babies, like let's take lions for instance. Leopard. The area we're driving in now is where the guys last saw Karula when she headed into Buffelshoek. I remember when she was sort of ready to have her previous cubs in Duna and Michel. She was also using this trailing line further behind us, moving around here quite a bit. So I am keeping my fingers crossed. I'd be so happy, as you can all imagine, if we could find Karula. Imagine finding her with newborn cubs. It's been a very special privilege to, over the years, have followed many leopards, but especially Karula, and I first met this, Seka and Tingana, the 2 females, of which at least that we know of, Tingana's had cubs now, and then the 2 males with Michel and Duna. And it's exciting to know that next stage of Karula's mothering is about to be happening. She could have 1 cub, 2 cubs most likely, 3 cubs possible as well. And she is an excellent mother, so more likely she'll raise them. And, yeah, it would be very special to be able to, even if it's just every now and again, come down and see where they're at and how it's going. Very exciting to know that at this moment, right now, maybe somewhere in the hollow of a termite mound or very, very thick, dense area of trees, Karula might be lying there already with two tiny little cubs. They'll be very small. They'll be this big now. Tiny, tiny little, almost blind things still. Well, not almost. They will still be blind at this young age. Otherwise, anywhere in the next few days. And then it's only a matter of time until we will see them and start to learn and love their story as well. Let's go have a look on Aubrey's Road. Just asking a question there regarding, again, parents and youngsters. Basically, once youngsters move on, if they will recognize their parents or adults if they see them again, I think that also depends, to a large extent on what species we're talking about. Some species spend a lot of time together, and others spend less time together. I think in the case of, let's say, impala, for instance, it's difficult, I don't want to say no, because who are we to say that they don't? There's definitely not much of an interactive relationship later on between a mother and the offspring in the case of, let's say, impala. But I'm not going to say that they can't recognize each other. They grow up together, they live together in very, very, very close, both physical and social proximity. So I'm sure that they know each other in future from small. To us, they all look the same, but to them, we all look the same. I'm going to turn around. I just saw these few impala. I just wanted to see if they're alert or aware of anything, but they're relaxed. Take Aubrey's Road behind us. But yeah, certainly in the case of things like of elephant and I would even say leopard and so on, I definitely think they recognize or can recognize each other down the line if they find each other again. Definitely in the case of elephants, when you're dealing with highly intelligent animals and highly developed senses of smell and hearing as well, so even from sound and smell they should be able to recognize each other, even if it was years later. No leopard tracks here, or at least no leopard tracks yet. MJ just asking whether leopards always have the same sex cubs. No, it's been coincidence, I guess, with Karula that her first litter were both females and the second litter were both males. Can also be, it's a warthog, but he's a bit of a thick stuff, can't see him. They can also have male and female cubs, so perhaps Karula's next litter, who knows? I mean, we can maybe start a little sort of predictive competition, see who thinks what. See how many people think Karula will have 2 females or 2 males or a male and a female. It's a bit like paper, rock, scissors. There's 3 options and any of them could be right. Don't fly. These are birds that we don't get to see often at all, even though they are one of my favorites. On the ground there. Stop to listen there. I'll try another one. One of the smaller dove species, and really one of my favorite low-felt birds. They make this beautiful call. I'm a little bit rusty with my bird calls. I haven't been doing them too much the last many months. But they have this very sort of melancholy type sound when you hear them calling. And this is a emerald spotted dove, or a green spotted dove. In Afrikaans we call them, if you translate the name, a little bush dove would be the direct translation from the Afrikaans name. There's a memory that came back. Valerie just asking, I'm trying to think how long ago that was, probably a year and a half ago or so. I remember Rory was with on camera. We had an amazing sighting, one of those sort of things that can only happen sort of as you're looking around and you get surprised by it. We were following Karula, this link that I've been talking about. It was there on Ledwood Road, and she was walking along. It was actually brilliant. Valerie well remembered. And there was a dove hiding on the road. We could see it. We actually, as Karula was walking, she hadn't seen it yet. And the dove was sitting dead still. And as the leopard came sort of abreast of it, the dove flew up. And the leopard, the first instinctive split second was, to get away from the sudden movement. But then she changed direction and leapt into the air and actually disappeared from our view and snatched the dove out of the air. But that was if I remember correctly, that was a turtle dove. It wasn't one of these. It wasn't the emerald spotted dove. It was I definitely remember the ring on the neck, and from the size of it, it was a turtle dove. Very, very exciting sighting. Exciting sighting. Yeah, perfect, Becky. Becky reminding me there of a belief, or a Shangaan belief, that two doves on the road is good luck and will bring you good luck. And Becky was saying earlier, I presume around the chat rooms, that you have to find two doves on the road and then we'll have the luck required to find Karula. And it just happened, so best we keep our eyes wide open now. Just a bit of general sort of chit-chat while we're looking around. Dave is just asking what I think about the coalitions in the area at the moment, lion-wise, the different sort of movements and call it the politics, if you want, of the current lion populations. Dave, just because I've been away for a few months, I'm not that up to date with all of them, and I certainly haven't seen much of them. Well, not yet. There's still a morning and an afternoon and another morning left, so hopefully we'll find some of them. But yeah, I mean, lions, typically the populations, there's always fluctuation within the groups, within the males, different competition, different coalitions. I believe some of the prides are not quite as big and strong as they used to be, the Styx pride as well as the than pumas. So I think I'll talk a bit more about the lions if we find them. I can talk about them. As for cameras, many of you might know and many of you might not, but I love photography. So it's a definite passion of mine. The ability to capture and share moments as well. And I didn't actually bring my sort of proper cameras with. I was in London just before coming here. It was a sort of a surprise visit to be able to come and pop in for a couple of days here with Wild Earth and Juma. And subsequently I wasn't traveling with my camera gear, but what I did get, which I'm quite excited about, I haven't used it yet this morning, but with technology going the way it is, and I was actually talking with a good friend of mine that I stayed with in London. He's a very good photographer. We were talking a lot about cameras and where it's going. And I've picked up a smallish one. I'm not going to go into it too much now, but it's only this big. And it's essentially a compact. This one is made by Olympus. Now my first camera ever was an Olympus. It's not one of those manual click ones. But this one is something I look forward to playing with. It's got take about 2.5 pictures a second, so it's not too bad in terms of continuous shutter use. It's got a pretty good size sensor, so the picture quality is very good, and it's small enough to travel with. I've got a 16 gig card in it, so I can shoot almost 2 hours of HD video on it. I can take a couple of thousand pictures, or many thousand pictures in JPEG, and I can probably get up to about, let me just do the math there quickly, probably close to 1,000 pictures in RAW. So I've got a feeling the versatility of cameras and certainly the compactness of cameras are going to be changing, or perhaps not changing, perhaps the way we will look at them will change over time. So yeah, there should hopefully be some opportunities to, Franklin's making a noise there, to play with the camera the next day or two. Speaking of cameras, isn't it brilliant to be able to go on 3D drives, even though not accessible to everyone at the moment, but I was looking and talking about that, or looking at that and talking about that in London now, and I think a whole new era of wildlife experiences are sort of on the horizon for us over the next year and 2 and 3, as three-dimensional viewing improves, which I'm sure it will be in the sort of rudimentary caveman stages of it now. It will open up a new window into wildlife. Some of the stuff I've seen already is just unbelievable. So quite fun to be playing around with, even if it is at this side of the lens, with this new and exciting technology as well. We're on Zoe's Road now. No one's driven here yet this morning, so now the game drivers have come this way yet, looking at the tracks. So let's see, maybe we find something to surprise us in this sort of last part of the drive. Skink there, but it's run away. So a skink is like a little lizard, for those of you that don't know what I was talking about. Ephraim guys from Wetela. Ephraim, what a character. I've known Ephraim for almost 10 years now. Brilliant guide and great sense of humor as well. One of the best trackers here actually. Phenomenal tracker. So I was just thinking about there's a giraffe up ahead, and this is what made me think about it. For those of you that have seen that clip about I forgot what the commercial is for, but about opulence, I have it. The guy that's talking about a whole long story, but it ends with this little mini giraffe sitting on the guy's couch. It's a very funny clip, and the reason I thought of it is here we're looking at an adult giraffe. This is a nice big bull, but the first I saw of these giraffes with two little ones, and I sort of looked over and I didn't know what we were looking at, because I just saw this sort of like caramel color in the bush, and then I realized it's two small giraffes that were busy eating leaves that was quite low, so the shape of it was quite odd. But you know, if you know the clip I'm talking about, you'll understand why. It's quite funny. This is a pretty good sized male with a tractor going around in the background there, just in case you're wondering what that is. The giraffe also having a look. It's just Johannes, I think, the new guy at Wetela that's looking after the roads. That's big male giraffe. You can see it from various things. The physical bulk, that little bump at the bottom of his belly, and then also something that people often use, and it's quite often the easiest sort of sure way to ID a male, or to ID the sex of a giraffe, is those horns. You can see the little bare patches on top, little bold horn tips basically. The females, apart from being a bit smaller physically, the horns tend to be also smaller, and a little cluster or a little brush of hair on top. I'm just going to quickly just slide out of my seat here, just while you're watching this giraffe. Just need to stretch my legs for half a second. Enjoy the giraffe, and I'll be back in my seat shortly. let's see if we can get a view of those little giraffe. They're not quite as little as the ones I was talking about, but small ones nonetheless. That's actually quite a nice view, just straight down the road. There's another adult, and since we were just comparing the two, male and female, this one is a female. She's walking away now, but much thinner horns and that little cluster of hair on the horn tips. If she's moving, hopefully the youngsters will follow. They're just off to our right here somewhere. There we go. A little bit behind the branches. Actually quite lovely. 3 of them, all 3 very young. Not much more than maybe a month difference between the biggest and the smallest one there. But all 3 of them younger than, I'd say, 2 months. And that's all I saw earlier. So when I looked into the bush, I just saw these shapes, and there were 3 mini giraffes. What amazing to think of them being born not even that long ago. And the mother gives birth standing up, so the baby actually sort of falls into the world. Quite important also to open the airways and make sure that the animal's breathing is that sort of initial sort of oomph as it lands. I'm sure it's one way to make sure that you're awake and alive. And they're also born with their horns already developed, which is something else that's unique. I'm just going to roll a centimeter or 2 forward. Actually get a nice framing there. Ah, look at that. Hey! That's beautiful. Having a look back at us as well. Now those horns are actually already part of the skull at birth. In the beginning they're a bit, imagine almost like cartilage bone, like our ears, so they're not 100% hard yet. That only takes, it takes a little while after birth for that to happen. Oh, that's lovely. I love how the shape of the branches are similar to the shape of the giraffes there. So of course the southern giraffe, you get a few different species. Well, kids are asking what the use of those horns are. What do giraffes use their horns for? The female is probably not, if I think about it straight away, nothing major comes to mind. Maybe for a little bit of protection sometimes, although they tend to use their hooves more for that. If they want to chase away lions, they can give them a very, very powerful or vicious kick. But certainly in the case of male giraffes, the horns are an important part of their sort of weaponry, if you want, in their battles. That sometimes it becomes battles. Normally it's more sort of lots of posturing. That's a beautiful view. Sorry to interrupt myself there, but look at that backdrop and the depth there. Little knobthorn trunk in the foreground. Mother just making sure the babies are all okay there. Oh, that's stunning. What a privilege, to be able to be out in the bush doing this. Something we must never ever take for granted and always be grateful for and about. I'm just loving these little mini giraffes. It's like 3 little carbon copies of the adults. But yeah, so the males, when they do a lot of posturing and what they call necking, then they use the horns, and if it goes into a serious fight or a battle, then those horns are actually, they can hit each other in the side or the neck with the horns as part of their battle then. Let's leave these guys to move on. They're moving into the sticks a bit. Oh, that was lovely. Something about them, just so different looking. Giraffes, long necks, long legs. Oh, let's have a look at this guy again. That's quite a nice view down towards him. No, actually no, don't worry about it. So I'm going to go behind those twigs. Nice big male. He's going to follow those females as well. And perhaps there'll be other females around. We didn't see the other adults, but 3 youngsters. There should at least be 3 females. And perhaps one of them is going into estrus again, which is why this big guy is following them. But yeah, they certainly are unique. Giraffes. Got a buffalo dung here from last night. Looks like some dugger boys or those bulls that tend to hang around in small groups. From again. Alpha, where must I look for Ingles in Western Derby? Okay, so nothing Western Derby. Copy that. that a little bit. Elephants, looks like from a few days back. We used to have a machete on here. Not? Okay. Because it's all wedged in there. I don't think we're going to just pull that. Let me try one more time.
In my head.
Alright. It would have taken an elephant a full half second to do that. Jack was just asking about females and babies. I presume he's speaking about the giraffe, Jack, with regards how long between pregnancies and how many a female could have. Well, giraffes have got quite a long gestation period, about 15 months or so. So, you know, let's say if it's a very, very healthy female in perfect conditions, lots of food and water and so on, you could probably have a little one once every 2.5 years. I think probably working more on one every 3 years. Giraffes live to be in their 20s, 24, 25, a bit older maybe. And they won't have offspring in their later years. So let's say 15 years, anything between 4 and 6 calves, maybe 7 if she's in very, very good conditions, would be my estimate. quick check. Bird making quite a ruckus in the back there. Nothing too serious. Just happy to be alive on a cool morning. Coming past Treehouse Dam. Nothing sort of jumps out at us. I can't see anything at the moment. amazing. I'm driving along like this and just having all these memories flashing back. Just different trees, a lot of it left related. But one of our last drives, just before we went, Vishen and I came in here, we followed in behind Ephraim actually, and Karula and I forgot which one now, Karula and Induna I think, in the tree we just drove past, and then later on Vishen joined them and we followed them all the way to Twin Dams, and those of you that were part of that drive will remember it. It was one of the best drives ever. And we followed them and eventually it ended up with the sort of, well, first of all, the tree that made me think of it now was awesome. We had the hyenas underneath. Buffalo! I'll talk about that story more just now. Buffalo down in the dip there, but also up ahead on the road, a couple of big dugger boys. I'll talk about that leopard story when we continue after these guys. A couple of big heavy bulls. Looks like quite a nice group of dugger boys or bulls. 3, 6, at least 9 or 10 of them, maybe a few more. Also, like I think most of the wildlife this morning, just enjoying the very welcome change in temperature and weather. You can hear the birds still singing away, even though it's getting later into the morning now. You see all these guys are busy ruminating now, chewing their cuds. Look at this guy in front, he's not eating grass, but he is chewing, so regurgitating and chewing and swallowing and regurgitating, like all ruminants do. Giraffe that we saw earlier, ruminants as well, antelopes. Basically just allows them to really grind the grass down very finely, and by doing so and using basically different stomachs, they can digest cellulose. So the cellular structure, if you want, of the plant matter they're eating, grass in the case of buffalo, they can get more nutrition from it because they really grind it down to a pulp. Very tranquil, peaceful setting here. We're right on the western bank of the Milwaukee riverbed. As I said, still quite a few birds making noise. I can still hear francolins and a robin down in the bushes there somewhere singing. And these buffalo also, I'd say probably within the next half an hour or so, will find themselves a place and lie down a little bit. Take a bit of a mid-morning rest. In fact, that's something I'm going to do myself not too long into this morning. Try and catch up on some lost sleep from the while back, and be out there again this afternoon. It's going to definitely be a good afternoon. It stays overcast like this, who knows what we'll find. So keep in mind another drive this afternoon, but still have a bit left from this morning. That's the beauty of the bush. You never know what's going to be next. There's always a surprise potentially around the next corner. Look at those oxpeckers. They're also having a bit of a dust bath. A good way for them to keep themselves clean. As much as they clean things like the buffalo in this case, they have to make sure that they also stay parasite free, and coating your skin and feathers in a bit of fine dust is one of the ways, or one of the good ways actually, of doing so. That's something you see all the time. These birds prefer being on animals. They obviously, one of the benefits in that relationship for them is that they're quite safe. If you're an oxpecker sitting on a buffalo, you don't exactly have to worry about something small that's going to come and catch you. And it's a very good example of what's called a mutualistic relationship. People often mistake mutualism and symbiosis with each other. Keep in mind that symbiosis or symbiotic relationship can even be like a parasite, or a parasitic relationship is also symbiotic. So there's a whole bunch of words to twist your tongue around. But a very, very nice example of two species living and working together, and both benefiting from it. Essentially, that's what mutualism is, where in this case the buffalo and the oxpecker both are benefiting. The buffalo is getting a nice valet service, a nice cleaning service. The oxpecker is getting a very specialized source of food. They're both a bit safer. The oxpeckers can be an early warning system for the buffalo, and the buffalo provides safety for the oxpecker. And one of those species, in this case the oxpecker, they actually rely on this relationship with large mammals for survival. So for those of you that are maybe into the terminology of things, mutualistic symbiosis that we're looking at here. Well, let's just give him another minute. I don't want to push him off the road. I think he'll probably head down to the riverbed anywhere in the next few seconds. Well, that was pretty much on cue. Thanks, Mr. Buffalo. Let's see if we can find something else on the way back towards camp. Actually, let's see if it stays around. You see the dung beetle? Just there. A little bit. Just there where my fingertip is. And it's been trying to get the ball, just if you go right in there, in that space, it's been trying to get that ball up the slope, and it's been falling down every time. There we go. Hey, maybe this time. Okay, well, he made it. Good for him. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to see more of that dung beetle. He was just pushing it up and rolling back down, pushing it up and rolling back down, sort of 2 steps forwards, 1 step back kind of thing. Well, we might see these guys again this afternoon. There's a little muddy pond pool down in the riverbed there. They'll probably stick around that for the day, in this general vicinity. track here quickly. Bit of a leopard track there, but it looks to be 2 days old or so. Not fresh enough to get too excited about, although yeah, see what this afternoon brings. Baby animals. 2 young waterbuck, young female and a young male. You can see the male, when you get close in, you'll see just getting those horns busy developing. Beautiful antelope as well, also a little bit fluffy, that sort of coarse hair on the neck, very characteristic of waterbuck. But the most characteristic part of waterbuck we can't see from this angle. You can just see the bit of white marking on the backside. They've of course got that sort of circular ring around the backside. Something that many a joke's been made about. Beautiful antelope, quite large antelope, and there'd almost certainly be adults around. Oh, there it is on the other side, behind the bushes. These guys are still too young to be on their own. Beautiful faces. I love their faces. Those white eyebrows and white markings around the nose, very striking. The perfect little heart shape of the nose. Very good swimmers, actually, as the name suggests. Waterbuck, even though they don't necessarily always live around water, they do often spend time in proximity of water. And one of their evasive techniques, if there's predators around, would actually be to run into water if it's obviously available. And very, very good swimmers as well. I've seen them a number of times. Once actually when lions were chasing a large bull waterbuck in Pilanesberg, a place called Lenga Dam. I watched the big male waterbuck run like the wind for the water, and then swam in, and of course the lion stood on the bank and just looked at him. Well, I think on this beautiful note, we're going to say thank you for the morning. Excuse me. My voice is still holding up, which I'm quite glad about. It means I can talk a lot more to you this afternoon. It's I think almost obviously been a pleasure, but just want to say thank you very much for what's been a beautiful morning. Really has been a lot of fun. Sorry, just so I can turn properly. It's been a lot of fun being out here. We've seen very good variety of wildlife. I've quite enjoyed giraffe and the kudu and the waterbuck and impala, baboons, lots of things, rhino of course, buffalo, and maybe this afternoon we're going to find a few cats. We'll see how it goes. As always, just thank you for joining us here in Sabi Sands at Djuma, and for being part of Wild Earth. And as I said, it was a pleasure being out here with you this morning. Craig back in final control, Sebastian behind the camera, thank you. And my name is Pieter, and I look forward to seeing you this afternoon. Do join us again later today. Bye bye.